Welcome to Faith Rising, a podcast about living with bold faith in the modern age. On this episode, Daniel and Amber chat with Sam Dickson on the journey to create change.
Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Faith Rising. We are going to have a good time today. We are going to be talking with Sam Dickson. Daniel and Sam have known each other since they're 5 years old. Having friendships like that is just really invaluable and amazing. And he's a really fun guy. He is a funny guy.
Too much fun sometimes.
He's the life of the party. He's the life of the church. He DJs all over the place. And so, but he has a testimony, and we want to bring that to you guys. And he has a testimony of going through a journey of growing up in the church with Daniel. You know, I didn't grow up in the church. These two grew up in the church their whole lives. And
preacher's kids.
Real true preacher's kids. And then the Lord took them on a journey, and so we want to hear about that. So, Daniel.
Well, it's so exciting to have you on the show today, Sam. And, we grew up together since we were, 5 years old?
Oh, yeah.
We met.
Yep.
And my family first moved here to the Denton area, and we started going to the church back when it was Believers Fellowship, before it was even Glory of Zion. And there were, 6 or 7 families there to start with, and maybe 100 people in the church. And we've watched the ministry grow since then, and gone on our own spiritual walks through that period of time, and everything the Lord's shown us and had us grow into. So it's just such an honor to have you on the show today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you all for having me.
Be able to share some of your testimony. You know, even though we grew up together, a lot of the things that we would visit about as kids and then as teenagers were not, centered around our relationship with the Lord as much as they are now, in our adulthood. And now that we have families and
y'all got into trouble too. Y'all got into
lots of trouble.
Well, we didn't get caught.
We're gonna hold
all
on
the
some of the
time.
talking about the trouble that we got into. That discussion with Sam before we got on air.
Yeah.
There are some things we're going to hold back on a little. But we learned lessons through life. So what was your experience? I want to hear, how did the Lord really draw you into a relationship with Him and your salvation?
Well, it was very interesting because, as you said, we grew up in the church, but, that doesn't always just solidify things, and I've had several different come to Jesus moments, as they say, but probably in my teens, I remember going to a camp and having a life-changing moment out there with the youth, and that was a special time. Used to travel around with the worship team. We used to play conferences a lot all around the world, so I had a lot of experiences from that, good and bad. But yeah, God has taken me and my family on several different journeys. It's not just that one journey, you know what I mean? So, but definitely, I feel like raised in the church is a great thing, but also I think we kind of sometimes get complacent and too comfortable with just the routines of things, and we don't always think about why am I doing these things, and especially me, my head's always in the cloud, so I'm not always listening all the time, but and sometimes you have to learn the hard way. I'm definitely one of those people. You know what I mean? I had talked about how in one of the Shabbat services that I did a little testimony, how, raised up with you and your family, Chuck as like a spiritual father, and all of your family, Keith, and how Keith, had walked through several things, and I had seen him do that, and how he, he would go to bat for people, and he would walk through hell for people. Yeah. And I think, God kind of took me on a journey to show, outside of the church, even though we were always in the world, He kind of took us on some journeys to really, really, really get into the depths of the world, to understand, to ask questions, and to really have a perspective of the world for people who are out there searching for something, but don't always feel comfortable and don't know why they don't feel comfortable, Yeah,
I think that what you just said is so key for us to understand. How you said that somebody had to be there to be willing to walk through hell in the face of ministry. And, as we've both grown up in ministry families, we've watched that. Some of the hell that the ministry itself has had to walk through, that our parents, that other families that started down this road had to walk through. And really the transformation that the Lord did in the ministry from the beginning, where the very face of the ministry and the understanding of God's Spirit and who God is changed, over time.
Drastically.
Believers Fellowship was a Bible church when we first got here, and through the course of all the things that our fathers and our parents and
back up just a second, because I don't think everybody knows what that is. Like Bible meaning, like with not being Spirit filled, is what. Whenever we say Bible church, some people know what that means, but I don't know if everybody does.
Yeah, well, I mean, it started, I think, even before the church, they were just meeting in a house, So,
it was a house church to start with. So, and then, just watching the progression of the things that they had to walk through is real key for us to understand in ministry in general. And I think a lot of people miss that they think of people who are in ministry or walk out that life as not having to go through anything or being perfect in a way, and that's not the way it is. I mean, how many different things did we watch over the years where the ministry went through splits and people went through things that had to be walked through. But God put those people in place that were willing and ready to endure hell on the behalf of the ministry and those around them.
Yeah, I mean, the church went through, several changes, but two massive changes where we became Spirit-filled, and half the church left and cursed us on their way out.
Wow.
That's right.
I remember cursed everyone in the church on their way out. And then we had another split later when I think we were still believers when we were on university. And we had
Believers Fellowship.
Yeah, I think we were still Believers Fellowship then, because I don't think, But we had another massive split with a lot of people left. And it was in the beginning a good intention split. It was just people moving. But then there were so many people that also went that had a disdain and a sour taste in their mouth for some reason, that left and made it a really negative thing, and that affected our parents. But we didn't always know what was, we knew what was going on, but sometimes we were just like, it was weird to run into people that you knew from your past and to be like, hi, and they're just like looking at you like, don't talk to me. And it was a weird feeling. It was just like, I didn't do anything to you, you know what I mean? Like, why are you so, like, why do you harbor such anger and resentment towards me? I'm a kid, you know?
That reminds me of a post I've been seeing going around on social media that says, just because you've left our church doesn't mean we can't still be friends. We're not a gang.
Yeah.
Most of us aren't.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's good.
But we've gone through lots of transitions, and even what we went through with COVID, that wasn't a split or anything, but COVID had a dramatic effect on the way we operated and the way that, Chuck guided us through the whole thing. And, I think it pulled us out on the other side better than what we were before.
Yeah.
And that's hard, because it was such a hard time for so many people, and to be able to have, when you're following God's path, you know what I mean? You see those victories, and not everybody can do that. Not everybody has an easy time following God's timing or his path, because we see like, okay, I'm at A, D is where I need to be, but I want to skip B and C.
Yeah.
Why do I have to go to B and C? Why do I have to wait this long? I want to go to D right now. I see it. I can just walk to it. But that path is there for so many reasons. It shapes us who we are, but it also puts people on our path that maybe we wouldn't have had before, opportunities to change lives and help people. So I think it's important, even though these transitions that the church has gone through were very difficult, and the ones that we went through ourselves are very difficult, it's important to see the path that God has set for you, and to calm yourself and relax and operate in that timing and allow God. It's not that we're just saying, okay, God, you do whatever you want. I'm just going to sit back and wait on you. We're still moving forward. We're still progressing, but we're doing it in a way that we're still operating in God's timing. And I think that's key and paramount for successful transitions when we have those splits.
I think of everything that you're saying right now, and how important it really is to see it from the perspective of a next generation. We're able to look back now because we were only kids when a lot of those things were happening, and see the progression of how the Lord used those events. And even though they were traumatic and hard at the time, they shaped the face of the ministry. They shaped the face of our lives, personally. And Amber and I talk all the time on the show and as we minister in person about how everyone's journey is different. Amber's testimony is completely different. She came from a home that wasn't strong with the Lord and wasn't going to church, and found her walk and salvation outside of that structure. And you and I, we grew up differently. We got a front row seat to a lot of the things that were going on. Yeah. But what we got to watch was really how the Lord used that to bring people up and make them stronger. And like you talked about running into people out on the street, you'd be walking through the grocery store or at the bank or something and run into somebody who split and went another direction. And, life's really like that. We're faced with decisions all the time. And those decisions have a great effect on where we head and how open we are to the Lord. It doesn't mean that other person's not going to find their way. It means that they have to choose another path. And just like you said, they may be a little more hard-headed to what the Lord wants to do with them right at the time, or maybe they're just not ready yet. Yeah. Some people just aren't ready yet, but we have to personally find that point where we make our decision, we follow the path that the Lord has for us, and become a whole person in that. Yeah. And then you can walk by anybody in the grocery store or the bank or anywhere else and walk right up and say, hi, look what the Lord's doing in my life. I'm so happy that you found your way also. Yeah. And that's what's really important.
And not to have resentment. Yeah, absolutely.
So. Well, I want to hear about you. I like the way you put it. You guys went through a journey in the world, you and your wife Jana.
Yes.
You've been married for almost as long as, maybe y'all got married 3 months before we did. So y'all are married almost 18 years now.
October, November. So y'all were December, we were October.
Yeah, and you've been, y'all
been. To sit and count, that, it's been a long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah, and you two have grown up together. You were kids when you met.
Yeah, we were. Jana was 16, I was 17, and we went to high school together, and that's when we started dating, and then. It's been a journey. It has been you know how it is when you're young and you get together, as you mature. I don't know if I can say I matured, but she matured and I had to kind of catch up.
Stay young. Stay young as long as you can.
Man, I'm trying. I'm feeling it now. But the journey, we've gone through a lot. We've gone through massive ups and downs, and God has, God has taken us and kind of showed us, and we had job prospects in school and stuff outside in Dallas. So at one point we knew that we were going out to Dallas, but there was also an opportunity that God was taking us on a path while we were going through that process. And that path was, like I said, sometimes growing up in the church, you get comfortable with certain things. You don't think about what certain things mean and why you do them. And I think that for me, I had really gotten into a really bad position with that, where I was doing everything wrong essentially.
You were moving up the corporate ladder.
Oh, well, that, yeah. When God kind of took us on that path out into the world, it was not just great for what he was showing us, but we also learned a lot about ourselves I never would have learned about going into the corporate world, and learning what my skills were in a corporate business world and whatnot, and Jana as well, what her skills were, and we learned a lot about ourselves. But I felt like God was calling us out to be like, because while we were out there, we had some friends out there that had churches and stuff, and so we were like, well, we'll go try and stay connected and whatnot, and it just wasn't. It was good for a minute, but it didn't feel right. It felt like God was saying, you need to get completely immersed in the world. I want you to find me in the dirt and the grit, so that those who are searching in the dirt and the grit you can know that perspective. And because like we were saying, when you are trying to help somebody like Keith was, walking with people, it wasn't that he was reaching his hand out and saying, here, let me help you out of the pit. It was, you got to walk through this, but I will not let you walk alone.
Keith will jump right in the pit
Keith
with him. I've seen him do it before.
Just to make sure everybody knows who we're talking about, Keith.
It's my uncle.
Keith is his uncle. Keith Pierce. It's Chuck Pierce's brother.
That's right.
And he's a prophetic voice there in this church. And
That's right.
He actually works, he has always stayed working
always been in
the world,
but
correct. He just loves to help people move forward.
He's been a really key figure in all of our lives. Even when we were teenagers and going through a lot of the things we talked about earlier, he was the one that was there to kind of hold the line and walk us through
He was our disciplinary a lot.
Disciplinarian.
Disciplinarian. He kept us in line quite a bit, and that's a task in itself. But for Keith, it just seemed natural, But yeah, there were several times where he was like, I'm not pulling you out. You clearly have to walk through this, but I'm going to walk through it with you. And I feel like that's the journey that God was kind of taking us on. He's like, And it's not a path that I'm suggesting for everybody. Like you said, everybody's path is different, and I felt like this was a very unique path for what position that he had for us when we came back to be a part of this body, to be a part of the functioning body, because we're not all supposed to be hands or eyes or teeth. We all have to function as, the body of Christ. We have to all play our parts correctly and be in position when God wants you to be in position. And like I said, sometimes that position means that you're in a place that you're not familiar with, like when I first came back. But when we got out there, we got really comfortable being in that position. So it was hard when God called us back. It was kind of abrupt.
Yeah. How did he tell us about how he called you back? And you came back on full time working for this ministry,
right? Which I had never done before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, our jobs we were doing great. Everything was going well. But then there were some transitions and I had, had opportunities to kind of travel from state to state and help open up companies and stuff. But I declined to do that. There were still some options for doing things like that. And we decided, we were thinking about what other, family and things like that, which we had never thought about before, because we were, again, just immersed in the business world and we were doing that full time and, other things. But it was just kind of this clear picture. I just saw a picture in my mind of returning and being part of the ministry, and which that has never been a thought in my mind before. I was always, like
focused.
Yeah, well, just in, I was both kind of in the church but in the world. But it was very clear, and so I talked to Jana about it, and we felt like that's what we were supposed to do. We were about to sign a new lease. And so we terminated that, and we made a clean cut just like that. I mean, it was really abrupt.
Yeah.
And we knew it was God, though, and so much so that on our way out, we had several business opportunities and from other people and other companies. Because when we got out to Dallas, we really got to know that it's a small family out there.
Oh, really?
It's not what you think.
Yeah.
It's small businesses supporting each other. So we got really immersed in that tight-knit group of people who loved us and cared for us.
Yeah.
And it was just this great family that we had. And so when we were leaving, obviously, they're trying to keep us there. And, we turned down offers after offers after offers because we knew that this was the path that God had for us. And even when we came back, I didn't have a position here right away. We were sleeping on my parents' couch. And while we were getting,
reestablished.
Right, thank you. And so an opportunity came open in the gym because Isaac and Tina were having a baby. And so they asked me to come help, run everything while they were out. And so I came and I was positioned in the gym. I stayed in the gym for 2 or 3 years. And I had loved the gym, and I loved being there with those people and stuff. And that was where God had me to be, you know what I mean? And I loved every minute of it. But in my heart, I knew that God had other things for me here too. But I wasn't rushing. I was trying to operate in that timing, you know what I mean? And as I was here, then opportunities came up with Illuminate, and I started teaching classes, and then opportunities. Then I got moved over to the studio where I work now.
Tell us about what all you do in the studio. Yeah.
So,
you've been under construction here for a while.
We've transitioned several times. After COVID, that's really when we made a huge transition into, as most people know, we started doing those productions more than like focusing on albums and stuff. And so Justin, Raina, and myself have been, fully immersed in that, and the new, the Judah Collective space. That new space is also part of that studio, and so that's developing now. We're going into phase 2 there. There's something very unique about that space. It's something very free and kind of it's
you
different.
Feel the Spirit of God in there when you
really
walk in.
Can, but it almost feels like it's a place where it's it's so interesting that one building can have so many different vibes in different spaces, but it's definitely something new in that space, and it's something that we're allowing God to just do a new thing in the sessions that we're doing in there. So I'm a part of that. I do the recording sessions with Justin. And then for productions, I help Justin work on those projects that we're doing. I help write some of the pieces that we do for the production, the music for those. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey to get to where I am now, crawling through kind of getting into the deep dirt of society.
And really walking in your calling.
Right, yeah. So it was never a moment, like, I wasn't immersed in a church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was immersed in the world, but God was continuously, downloading things while we were going through that. And so it kind of caused me to be more dependent on listening, you know what I mean, than the way I had done in the past, But God really did, and I'm still on this path, you know what I mean? God's still changing so many things about the structures that I had operated in before, and just even the way I prayed was, it was almost like God was like, you're not really doing that great. Why don't you stop for a minute and let's recalibrate this, because I prayed, very selfishly, like me, God, I need this and this and this and this. And I really wasn't looking at like the purpose of prayer and how it can really help and be effective. But God has shown me those things, he's shown me blueprints and strategies for war and all sorts of things that I know will come into play more and more as we continue on this journey.
Tell us how you changed in your prayer life.
Okay, so when I came back, because this is not a recommendation for people. This is just what God did with me.
I have to say that all the time.
Yeah, I'm not telling anybody else to do this. In there. Yeah, but I made a clean cut. I stopped praying at all because I had become so dependent on the just doing it, like I said, the wrong way my whole life, pretty much. And it wasn't that I didn't have instruction. I did. It's just that I just didn't know. Even though I was raised in the church, I didn't know how to really pray in the way that God wanted me to pray. Maybe.
Yeah.
When I came back, and when my wife got pregnant, I immediately went back into that. Oh God, please protect. I was praying out of fear.
I have just recently realized, and I said that on the show a few times ago, that I realized I was praying out of fear many times. Yeah.
And that's a big chunk of what it was. A lot of times I was praying out of fear. And,
like, oh God, keep us safe. Don't let me have a car accident.
Right.
Stuff like that.
But also I would get upset if the prayers weren't answered exactly. You know what I mean? And I feel like we do that so often. We put this pressure on God to be like, hey, you got to answer these prayers. Here's my prayers. You got to make this come true. And if it doesn't, I'm angry at God. I'm mad at God because he didn't do that. And so when Jana got pregnant, I started praying, Lord, please protect her. Please protect our child. And I almost heard an audible voice say, why are you praying to me in this way so that you can blame me when something goes wrong?
Wow.
And it was like a gut punch. I was like, oh, man. That's exactly what I've done in the past. So that journey of just changing my prayer and strategizing my prayer and being selfless in my prayer, those are things that changed on that journey. And if I didn't do it that way, and if I just kept trying to doctor up the way I was praying, I would still be praying. And it's hard sometimes. It's hard not to pray in fear.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that when we hear those lies to come against them before we even start praying. And then when we're praying, we're being assertive about those things. Instead of praying in fear, we're praying against fear. I heard those voices so many times I remember Isaac and I were both, several of us were being attacked at like the same time at one point. And it was all these lies of like death and things, with their families and stuff. And we were all hearing them at the same time. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And then I remember, so I don't like elevators that much. I'm fine in elevators, but like the idea of an elevator shutting down on me is just...
That just happens here.
Yeah, it did.
I think we all have a trigger. All of us have some trigger that causes us to step into fear, like to begin to operate out of fear. And each one of us knows what that trigger is. You just described one of yours with the elevator, but there's always that opportunity to choose to step into fear and begin to walk that way. And we have to rebuke that and stand up against it and really take authority over a spirit of fear in our lives, or it will affect our prayer life. It will affect our direction in life. It will affect what the Lord can do with us.
And it's hard not to. It's hard not to. But I remember hearing a voice at that same time when I was getting into the elevator and said, "This is the time you're going to get locked in. This is the time." And it was the same voice. And when I said, some words, and I was like, "Forget you, buddy. I'm going in," and because I'm not operating in fear. I hit that button and went down. Everything worked well. And then when I came out, I said, "Aha." I recognized that voice. It was the same voice that was saying all these lies about death. And as soon as I came out of there, as soon as I went against that fear and I recognized it, I was like, you just screwed up, you idiot. You just made a mistake, and I know who you are now. Now I can come back and attack you. Now I can combat you, and now I know who you are. So you're lying. And after that, it's like it was all gone. It was a faint whisper, if anything, if it tried, because I didn't operate in fear. I came against the fear because I knew it was a lie, but then also I recognized that lying voice and all those fears that were coming against me. Even though I rebuked them, they would just keep coming. But once I recognized that was a demon, I knew it. I knew the voice. It was easy for me to just combat it at that time.
It was a spirit of fear.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting the way that you just described that, because it was so clear. And that's what it's about. We really have to get to a point in our lives where we recognize those voices. And it's the same with recognizing the Spirit of God as it is with recognizing the spirit of the enemy or the spirits of the enemy that might try to attack us, including fear. And fear is really one of the biggest ones that has the greatest effect on us. We don't usually break and kind of pray right in the middle of the show, but I'd like to take just a minute to really rebuke the spirit of fear.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if y'all will join me. Lord, for our viewers right now, I just want to thank you for this time that they've been able to tune in, and that we've been able to be here with Sam and really address this and look at this. And we just rebuke a spirit of fear right now over our viewers and over those that follow this ministry, Lord, and over anybody that hears this. We just pray right now that there be a release, and that you'd show them what action that they need to take right now in this moment to break that spirit of fear and release them into your spirit and release them into your future. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
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 So sometimes we just feel led to do those things, and that's part of ministry, and it's part of what the Lord does with us is we have to just step into those things that he shows us in a moment and break those spirits that hold people back. So thanks so much for sharing that with us.
Absolutely. So, it's been a fun and interesting journey, and I'm looking forward to continuing to move in faith and move as God opens up things, and I really hope that having gone through these journeys that we've gone through, that we can be helpful to others and those who are watching and those who are out there in the world. I hope that by our walk and by our struggles and by the success and overcoming that we've had through God's favor, that we can be a walking example for those out there, and they can see that sometimes you gotta walk through hell.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I always look at in my life and I've been through a similar process. I worked in law enforcement for 10 years before we went into full-time ministry, and the Lord called us into that. And in my case, I'd always seen the fact that the Lord would call us into ministry. That's been a call that's been over my life since the beginning. It wasn't a suddenly for me. It was something that the Lord had me step into and at an appointed time. But I feel like we're ministering in whatever walk the Lord has us in at the time. And one thing that you said earlier while you were going through your story was that you felt comfortable while you were out in Dallas during that period of time. You felt comfortable with it. You were very successful in the business world and the corporation that you were working with. And I remember that. Everybody here talked about it, here in Denton, how much the Lord had done with you out there. So the Lord calls us to those seasons, and that's not the season that you're in right now, but he took that season and he made you who you are today.
I learned a lot from it,
And he very much did the same thing with me. He did the same thing with Amber, her past before she entered into a relationship with the Lord, and mine in law enforcement before I entered into ministry. I was a minister the whole time.
Yeah.
I ministered to people in the course of my work when we were in law enforcement. I have a much greater opportunity to minister to people now than I did then, but some of the things during that time in my life really strengthened me to become who I am today. So I think that's the real takeaway from all the stories that have been shared here today. And is there anything else the Lord really showed you through that time?
I think it's just like you said, it's recognizing that you're in a season and operating in that season and being grateful for that season, even though sometimes those seasons are hard, and sometimes it's hard to be grateful in seasons like that. When you know you're walking on the path, when you know you're walking on the path that God has for you, you know you're operating in His timing. And again, you might not see the great things that God's doing you in that time, but the path is necessary. The path is what strengthens us and creates our character and how we overcome things and how we are tested. So I would just encourage everybody to, remember that when things are difficult, when you're walking on the path that you know God has set for you, it's not always A to D. It's always usually A, B, C, D, and you got to go through those transitions. But remember, you never know who God's going to put in your path that might have needed you in that moment. If you had tried to skip past that, what would have happened to those lives?
That's right.
So, like you when you were working with the police department and in the jail, how many lives could have been how many lives were affected by you, and how many wouldn't have had that opportunity if you weren't where God wanted you to be at that time. So
that's right.
That's.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share with our viewers as far as what would you say to them from a ministry standpoint when they're walking through a time when they're in but not of the world, and maybe a time the Lord's called them to, but they're being strengthened through that?
I think it's important to listen to what people are saying when you're in the world. I think it's extremely important to listen to what people's struggles are. And what's really hard is not to judge people when you're in the world and or in the church. You know what I mean? Wherever you are, it's difficult, but you got to understand that people are on different paths and whatnot. But the real battle is working with people who are suffering. You know what I mean? And when you are in the world, don't be that judgmental thing, that entity that's in the world and still not really, and trying to rise above everything. Really look at what the struggle is in the world. Really look at what's hurting people's hearts. And, I think it's all about just God's message is love. It's not resentment. It's not judgment. It's not these things. It's love, and trying to find out, because everybody has a path. Somebody who might seem like they're just an awful person, you don't know what they went through to get to that point. What was their path that dragged them down to that abyss? So I think it's important for us all to know that everybody has a path, and we don't know what anybody else has walked on. So try and listen to what is going on in these people's lives, because it will give you guidance on how you can pray and how you can pray unselfishly. Is that a word?
Yeah, we can.
Sweet.
And if it's not, we can make it one.
We'll add it to the dictionary.
Right. We'll add that to the dictionary. But yeah, selflessly praying for people who come into your path. Be observant, be aware, and be that love and joy. And yeah.
I just, on your hat, it says create change. So the journey to create change.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're always just trying to. Well, one last story and this is nothing, but we went to a splash pad with our daughter, a big place, and while
like
we were
a water park.
Yeah, okay. Well, kind of, yeah, like a small one at a little city or whatever. And this lady came by and she said, "Does anybody want pizza?" And I was like, "Is she selling pizza?" And I was like, I don't want any. Janet was hungry, so she was like, "Yeah, I want some pizza." And she was like, "Well, it's over there. You can go and take the whole box if you want." We had a birthday party and no one showed up.
Oh my goodness.
And we were just like, "Nope, not today." So we got up and we got all of our friends and kids. And Jana has been through, a lot of tough times growing up and whatnot, and so her heart got, she was just melting for this child. She was 5 years old.
Oh my goodness.
And Jana went around and started talking to all the parents out there who had kids there. We got like 20 plus kids together. We all sang happy birthday for her. We had a big party. It was it turned out to be a really special thing, but that's what God's love is.
Yeah.
It's just seeing somebody who's going through something and just showing that love and compassion for them, because that kid will remember that for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
If it had gone downhill, they would have remembered that pain. That scar would have stuck forever.
Yeah.
But instead, they're going to have that joy and love that sticks with them forever.
That is such a great story.
So,
It is. It
You
really
know.
is a great
But yeah.
testimony.
Just a small thing, but those small things matter.
That's not a small thing. That's an awesome story.
Yeah.
What I see in that is that, when you're in a place where you're in the world, it forces you really to operate out of a different level of grace than when you stick to your own, on the inside. And when we do that, when we begin to operate in that grace that the Lord has for us, His love shines through. And that's what happens, and that's how we have to walk when we're in the world, to maintain a place of being in but not of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so many times it's not what you say, it's your actions.
That's it.
And
Absolutely.
it's being that shining light in a dark place. Doesn't mean you have words that you're speaking. Sometimes you're just walking and exuding that joy and that love, you know what I mean? So
I feel like, we've addressed that on this show a few times, because I feel like people get it so wrong whenever they talk about being in the world but not of it. Like they think being in the world but not of it is like being super weird or trying to make yourself stand out or being super religious, and that's not what that means. It's things like what you just said, like what you did for that 5-year-old kid.
Sure.
And so
it creates a change. That's the thing in the spirit. When you walk that way and you begin to take the actions that the Lord shows you, that He puts right in front of you, like you just described, it creates a change. And we all need to walk that way wherever we're at in life. Even if we're just walking through the grocery store. I've had more things happen in the grocery store than I can even remember, where the Lord just put someone in my path to talk to or make a change. And we have to walk that way every time we leave our front door.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Well, thanks for joining
Thank
us
you for having
on the
me.
show.
Whoa, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
It's been a pleasure, man.
Absolutely. It was great catching up.
So you can, if you want to share this, that I think this story, I think that your testimony will help lots of people.
I hope so.
If you want to share this, like, subscribe, and we'll keep on bringing you people with testimonies and believing for faith to rise in you.